We're extremely fortunate to have Mr. Ratan Tata. I'm sure you are too. So what we have done is chosen a bunch of people who wanted to ask you specific questions, and the list was sent to us, and I know you have not seen it. What I will do is read the question.
Yeah.
They range from generic company building to what an entrepreneur ought to do, those kind of things. And I will read out the question, and if you could, please identify yourself on who has asked the question. I'll name it, and then he will answer the question. It's a 30-minute session, so if there is time left, we can go for open questions. Otherwise, we'll stick with the questions that have been asked. And if there is any clarity that you need, you can ask, but otherwise, please do not deviate from the question that is already on here. And in the end, if there is time left, even I have many questions, but let's see if we can get to ask some questions.
Okay.
So the first question, which has to do more with brand, culture, decision making. You can make it as specific as you like, but how to build a highly trusted brand. So Vijay Anand has asked the question.
The only thing I would say is that your brand should not overpromise, or what you do to promote the brand should not overpromise and underperform. You should always make the brand stand for something that's the other way, that it understates what the brand can do. And that's easier said than done, because it may take many years to achieve that. There used to be a time when an IBM was a brand that stood for something, and Apple stands for something today, or Samsung stands for, a brand of excellence and capability, but not overstated and overhyped. There's no shortcut to building trust. That shortcut doesn't exist. Trust has to be built on actual performance. And I'd like to say that companies who have built trust over a period of years can lose it just like that, because it's the face that you have with your consumer or your customer is the face of A, B, or C, or D in the organization that may not share the genuineness that you may be building in an organization. So trust has to be permeated through the organization with the same look and feel, and not that somebody gets redress coming to you but gets badly treated and by someone else. So being able to permeate that sense of trust and confidence and faith in the company has to be felt by everyone.
So the next question is on, is creativity something you value in an organization, or is it overrated? So this question was asked by Santosh Arjun.
I think creativity is something that one looks for in a company. I think a company without creativity can be, not necessarily so, it can be a dead company. It can be a company that is too complacent about its market position, about its brand, about its capability, and one day wakes up to find out that a new company has taken over. I don't think creativity is, the other side of that is a feeling that creativity can cause chaos. I don't think true creativity can ever cause chaos. Chaos is caused by rambling sort of confusion. Creativity in its true sense, if it's positively listened to and controlled in a manner that doesn't create discord, is something that I would personally look for in an organization. It means that people are are creating new ideas, and that there's somebody who's listening to them and encouraging that to happen. I'd just like to say one more thing. In Tata Motors, for many years, they created a suggestion box for improvement. And these were the suggestion, there was a prize given, a monetary prize given. And most of the creative answers, or suggestions rather, came from the shop floor, from people who were uneducated in relative terms, but who saw a creative solution for something that engineers in the lab had never noticed. No chaos, no sense of discord, and creativity can come from anywhere, but needs to be heard, needs to be listened to.
Yeah, I think you talked about, I'm sure you listened to the questions there, he talked about his own experience in the beginning of his career on how to tame creativity, what you would need to do very early in the game. So I think part of sort of clarification there is at an individual level. I mean, some organizations like military works very regimented, in a very regimented way, whereas early stage startups, of course, you have to nurture creativity, otherwise it's not going to go anywhere. So even large corporations have a balance between complete creativity versus some amount of process-driven things. So in a corporation, how do you either encourage creativity, or I guess part of the question is, I mean, is it more talk or is it really encouraged?
I think you have to create an environment of greater informality. I don't think there's a lot of creativity in a very formal organization. Some cultures would not permit that informality to exist. I think the startup industry today in India is creating that informality for the first time. I think that's going to create that kind of equality amongst people, that the CEO gets addressed by his first name, that there's informality in the environment that people work in. And many of us, and including myself, that have started small companies or small divisions or small departments, have enjoyed so much being in that, creating that as it grows. And then it gets too big to be enjoyable anymore, and it gets formalized, and the creativity goes down, and the comfort zones start to take place. And I think the creativity in a small organization is far higher and far more invigorating.
Yeah.
And if one could find a way of having a large corporation retain that, as a company like Google or Google's a good example.
And create a culture around it.
Create a culture that's always fostering creativity, even though it's so huge, by virtue of creating departments which talk to each other, no silos.
Yeah.
I think that's the kind of environment that we should seek to establish.
Yeah. I think it really has to, at least in my view, it has to start in our own universities, where there is too much of siloed interaction, there is no interaction that happens.
I'm glad you mentioned universities, because I think there is truly a need for faculty-student exchange without this great hierarchy that gets created. The other place which I think it hurts Indian not to have the equality issue is in our scientific institutions, our labs and our research, particularly the government ones, where you can't question something that has taken place. In the very place where you expect new ideas to happen, it's very sad because they won't happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure those who have been educated in East and West realize the significant difference in the way that culture is being.
So what one hopes might happen in India is that apart from enterprises that are set up, that research groups would emerge where there are no holds barred, where they can let any idea get formed on the basis of scientific research and see them come to bear, which will not happen in India. The person will go back to the US or somewhere and it will happen there. Medicine is going to be one area, medical breakthroughs is going to be one area that this is particularly apt, the statement governs, because this decade, in my view, is going to be the decade of breakthroughs in medical treatment for cancers, and we've got 3 or 4 important tools that have come to bear. Imaging, great computing power, stem cells, and genomics and DNA, which all put together are tools that will enable us to look molecularly at some of the areas that need to be treated. And this is not going to happen in India, whereas it can, because it's human capital that will govern.
Yeah.
All the other tools could be available here, but it needs an environment that will enable it to happen, and not for these scientists to be pulled down and not be allowed to express themselves.
Yeah.
So I think you're going to see in this decade a lot of scientific breakthroughs with Indians outside India, when there could be an environment in India which would foster this to happen.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think we are seeing many early stage startup companies in that mode, and I think medicine, drug discovery, and so on are areas where it is not too asset intensive as like in, let's say, semiconductor or something. So
That's
with
right.
computers you can do a lot of things. So it's a good point that you're saying that in the next decade a lot of changes can happen there. So another question, I'll go to the next question, which is again not connected to the first 2 questions. What have been some business failures or decisions that you have overseen that entrepreneurs can learn from?
Okay. I talked about the nano.
Correct.
Obviously, that had a terrific high, and then for various reasons, one was the pulling out of the plant when it was almost completed and building a plant in another part of the country, that the complacency of having 300,000 cars booked with full payment, which was at the time of a feeling that a year later the same excitement would exist, was wrong. And lastly, the not staying with the marketing of this and allowing it to be branded by the salespeople as the cheapest car, which became a negative. So my answer to your question would be, if there's a champion or an owner of an idea or a project, let him stay with the project till its fulfillment. Don't hand it over to standard marketing or your normal dealer network or such to do. Stay with it. If I take another example, if I look at an Apple product, there's an amount of detailing and such that goes into the packaging, into the marketing, into the look and feel of how the product is pushed to the market, which I think adds to the strength of Apple, which it would not if it were done differently.
Yeah. Some of the lessons, I think, closely get involved, and you need to see it through. Don't dump it on somebody else to be able
Then
to.
many organizations, hand over a new product or a new development to the department or the division that will take it forward. But to continue to have the involvement of the creator, I think is very, very important all the way to the end.
Yeah. So the important word is actually involvement, because now if you try to do everything, then of course you are micromanaging and you'll be doing everything. But at the same time, you have to be plugged in enough that it can be taken through to the end.
So, quick question regarding this only. Since India is, I feel India is a price-sensitive market, and you launched the cheapest car. So, if you had projected as maybe youngsters' car or
It was designed and developed as a concept for an affordable family car. It's a soft option
for the
it's a soft option to say that it's the cheapest car. In fact, initially it started not being a car, it started how to make it a safer scooter. That's how the
Big
development
difference
started.
between affordable and cheap, right? So that has a.
or maybe we could have projected in that.
What's being done now, I guess it's not too much of a secret because it'll be out, is to do just what you said, to create a trendy, a turbocharged Nano, which is quite sporty per se, to no longer a 1 lakh car, of course, but a car that is meant to attract the trendy people, the young people as such, and to be upgraded internally so that it's no longer a car built for economy.
So next question is by Shirish Bohare. How important is it for startups to live their values as always believed by the Tata Group while trying to scale up rapidly? So I guess from large company perspective, you live the values, and that has come over a long period of time. But as a startup, when you're starting, how important are values to think about at that point?
I think even more important. It's much more difficult in a large company to uphold values. In a small company, when you start is the time you insert the DNA of that organization at that time. It's easy.
Yeah.
And it's very unfortunate if that company is built on a lack of values or lack of ethics, because I don't think even in the eco culture that you have, there will be success. It'll dissipate very fast as you'll be a crooked entrepreneur.
Yeah. Poor foundation.
Yeah.
So the next question by Ashish Agarwal is, the millennials are predominantly driving startups in India. What would you tell them are non-negotiable business practices that don't change over time?
I think the same elements are non-negotiable. What you honestly believe is what's fair to the customer or the community that you're serving, and the manner in which you go about your business. I've always felt that I can win or lose, but fight somebody in the marketplace. It's very difficult to fight somebody who's in the corridors of power. And instead, if everyone had to fight on a level playing field in the open, we would be a country that was much more competitive and much more driven to finding success through merit and competitiveness rather than these artificial forms of success.
Should startups cultivate a culture of giving back while trying to grow rapidly? I think part of it is there is not a whole lot of giving back that happens, at least in our Indian culture for that matter. And I know people do it once they have achieved a certain level, the question is, do you start it at a startup stage itself? If so, how do you think about it? Because you've got other priorities as well.
I think there'll be some startups that will be in an area that you will be giving back to communities. That's very nice, but I don't think every startup can claim to have that as its mandate. But there'll be some that are in a sphere where, let's, for example, say somebody develops a very low-cost water purifier that gives drinking water. You're giving back to society something. Automatically, that's what you're doing.
Okay.
But I don't think you have to say that 5% of your net worth has to go back to the community. That would not, in my view, be necessary.
Especially when you're not making profits as a startup. Saurabh Naik, what is the one advice that you would like to give to an early stage entrepreneur? I think there are many advices that were given, but since you are forcing you to give one piece of advice, what would that be?
I think it's obviously an answer that I won't be very satisfied with, but asked and just coming off the wall. I think if you're a young entrepreneur and a new enterprise, and you're creating an enterprise that is going to make a difference, that's the one thing that you would like to build your business on, the fact that you made a difference. Not that you
Also did it.
not that you also ran, not that you just mixed in the noise or the crowd, but that you made a difference. And if you're building your company on the fact that you're going to make a difference, you're going to do something better, cheaper, more competitively, serve the community better, that's a terrific way to start. And all of those are interrelated, can be said to be the one thing that you're making a difference.
Yeah.
Just to amplify what I said, Sir Ian Fleming developed penicillin. He made a difference. He may not have thought so at that time, but he made a difference. The first antibiotic that came to pass was his. And so whatever he did, he made a difference.
Huge difference, yeah.
So that's the kind of thing that one feels that we should base a new company on.
Something that's significantly making an impact. So I'll jump to the next question, which has been asked by a few people. Varun Kulkarni, Amit Gupta and Chandra. They all revolve around the same theme, which is, what do you look for in a startup investment? Because these are all entrepreneurs who have ideas. And of course, as investors, we look at it. He's also an investor with a lot of experience. So what do you look for in a startup that you invest in?
Of course, one wants to be excited about the area that the startup is looking at. The basis of getting a startup, again, that is not just a Me Too company that's doing the same thing that 5 other people are doing. But to me, the most important issue is not the business in which the company is, it's the discussion with the founders. It's how they come across. The passion, the sincerity, the enthusiasm. It's difficult to put all that into words.
When you evaluate an enterprise, how much of your final decision is based on gut feel versus stringent analysis? I think
right now, a very large amount of my analysis is gut feel. Gut feel presented by the founders. Most of the companies have been companies that in one form or another have come to me. There have been very few that I have gone and said, you're in a very interesting area, because I don't have the capability of seeking out those companies. So let's say an involvement in Kalari or something gives me a basket of opportunities which I don't have. I will if I expand the organization to some extent. So today, it's difficult to say that I'm seeking out early investment in companies, or so. It's those who come to me that I evaluate, and an association in terms of being exposed to a larger market of companies is what I'm experiencing now. So inevitably you get involved with initially with the more visible companies, and maybe those who try to reach me find it difficult to get through to me, and I need to change that.
And I think to your gut question, right? I mean, gut comes from a lot of experience too. Ignorant gut is different than somebody with a lot of experience. So even though it may be a gut investment, it's backed by a lot of data that has been seen. So it is not necessarily not data driven. Although as investors, we are highly data driven. I think in the end, good decisions are made when there is what you would call gut, which is based on a lot of experience that has come through.
There's also one other thing. When you're new in an area, you will necessarily be looking, you meaning me, at some place where there's a little bit of track record possible than sitting at the time of a conception. So inevitably that will move as greater experience is created on my side. It's like coming to you and saying, I'm thinking of an affordable car. You can say that, why do you need it? At a later point, if it's successful and has a track record, you would want to be a part of it. Or if it's a failure, you don't. And I think it's just a hedgy way of getting into the business.
So we're running out of time, so I'll ask one more question which is completely different than all the other questions. In the US, there is significant investor interest in privatization of space industry. Do you think this can happen in India? Is this an area of interest to you?
The aerospace area is still tremendously tied up in the monopoly of the state sector. So ISRO and others, although they share a lot of component manufacturing, we don't have a supply chain. In the aerospace area, I chose to look at component supply, major systems of aircraft, to supply back to the principal, because in India there's no market for it. It'll come, but I think not for several years. It took so many years for NASA to open up.
Great. Thank you very much, sir.
Okay.